This is Top Accolade Global News Updates. I am Soibifa Jagrich. Israeli forces bombarded areas of Rafah, Palestinian residents said, as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dismissed U.S. President Joe Biden's threats to withhold weapons from Israel if it assaults the southern Gaza city. A senior Israeli official said that the latest round of indirect negotiations in Cairo to halt hostilities in Gaza had ended and Israel would proceed with its operation in Rafah and other parts of the Gaza Strip as planned. Israel has submitted to mediators its reservations about a Hamas proposal for a hostage release deal, the official said. If we must, we shall fight with our fingernails, Netanyahu said in a video statement, but we have much more than our fingernails. In Gaza, Palestinian militant group Hamas and Islamic Jihad said their fighters fired anti-tank rockets and mortars at Israeli tanks massed on the eastern outskirts of the city. Residents and medics in Rafah, the biggest urban area in Gaza not yet overrun by Israeli ground forces, said an Israeli attack near a mosque killed at least 3 people and wounded others in the eastern Brazil neighborhood. Video footage from the scene showed the minaret lying in the rubble and 2 bodies wrapped in blankets. An Israeli airstrike on 2 houses in the Sabra neighborhood of Rafah killed at least 12 people, including women and children. Among the dead was a senior commander of the militant Al-Mujahideen barricades and his family and the family of another group leader, medics, relatives and the group said. Israel says Hamas militants are hiding in Rafah, where the population has been swelled by hundreds of thousands of Gazans seeking refuge from the bombardments that have reduced most of the coastal enclave to ruins. In the United States, the White House repeated its hopes that Israel would not launch a full operation in Rafah, saying it did not believe that would advance Israel's aim of defeating Hamas. The United Nations General Assembly on Friday is set to back a Palestinian bid to become a full UN member by recognizing it as it qualified to join and sending the application back to the UN Security Council to reconsider the matter favorably. The Palestinians are reviving their bid to become a full UN member, a move that would effectively recognize the Palestinian state after the United States vetoed it in the 15-member UN Security Council last month. The vote by the 193-member General Assembly on Friday will act as a global survey of support for the Palestinians. An application to become a full UN member first needs to be approved by the Security Council and then the General Assembly. But while the General Assembly alone cannot grant full UN membership, the draft resolution being put to a vote on Friday will give the Palestinians some additional rights and privileges from September 2024, like a seat among the UN members in the Assembly Hall, but it will not be granted a vote in the body. Diplomats said the draft text is likely to get the support needed to be adopted. The Palestinian push for full UN membership comes 7 months into a war between Israel and Palestinian militants, Hamas, in the Gaza Strip, and as Israel is expanding settlements in the occupied West Bank, which the UN considers to be illegal. The Palestinians are currently a non-member observer state, a de facto recognition of statehood, and that was granted by UN General Assembly in 2012. Elon Musk's X has policies to take down harmful content when it chooses, but should not be allowed to overrule Australian law in deciding what can be viewed there. A lawyer for the cyber regulator told a hearing into video of a bishop being stabbed. X, formerly Twitter, is fighting an orderly by the e-safety commissioner to remove 65 posts showing video of an Assyrian Christian bishop being knifed mid-sermon in Sydney last month in what authorities called a terrorist attack. X says global removal is reasonable when X does it because X wants to do it, but it becomes unreasonable when X is told to do it by the laws of Australia. Tim Begbie, the lawyer, told a hearing of the federal court, Australia's second highest. Other platforms such as Meta took down the content quickly when asked. He said, adding that X had policies to remove very harmful content as responsible services did, but X's opposition to global removal could not be right as it would determine the definition of reasonable within the terms of Australia's Online Safety Act, he added. The company, Marks bought in 2022 with a declared mission to save free speech, says it has blocked Australia from seeing the post but refused to remove them globally on the grounds that one country's rules should not control the internet. Begbie said the dispute was not a debate about free speech but rather about the practicality of the Australian law that gives the regulator power to protect citizens from the most objectionable content. Geo-blocking Australians, the solution X offered, was ineffective because a quarter of the population use virtual private networks that disguise their locations, he added. Global removal in these circumstances is a reasonable step, he said. It would achieve what Parliament intended, which is no accessibility to end users in Australia. Ex-lawyer Brett Walker said Australian laws left it open to interpretation what amounted to reasonable steps to protect the country from offensive content, but the Marks-owned company had gone to reasonable lengths. Talks to draw up a global pact to help fight future pandemics are likely to miss an initial deadline on Friday, three sources close to the process said. Negotiators from the World Health Organization's 194 member states were hoping to have a final draft agreement by the end of Friday, with a view towards adopting the legally binding text at the World Health Assembly later this month. Instead, talks on the text may have to continue, sources said, as countries grapple with key sticking points. The aim of the document, alongside a series of updates to existing rules on dealing with pandemics, is to shore up the world's defenses against new pathogens after the COVID-19 pandemic killed millions of people. But there have been deep disagreements throughout the negotiating process, particularly around equity. The accord, commonly known as treaty, has also become politicized in some countries. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said this week teams were strongly committed to finalizing the agreement in time for the World Health Assembly. Some of the treaty's most contentious elements, including details around a pathogen access and benefit system, have already been pushed back to later discussions, with a deadline 2 years from now. The system intends to codify sharing of materials with pandemic potential, such as new viruses or strains, and ensure that all countries benefit fairly from the vaccines, drugs, and tests developed as a result. The existing draft treaty includes a clause asking pharmaceutical manufacturers to reserve 10% of such items to donate to WHO and 10% for the agency to build at affordable prices to distribute in poorer countries during health emergencies. A Florida County sheriff released body camera video of a deputy fatally shooting a black airman who had a handgun at his side in his apartment after civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who represents the family, urged officials to release it. The family of the deceased, Roger Fortson, 23, has insisted the deputy, who was investigating a domestic violence complaint, knocked on the wrong door on May 3rd. The video showed Fortson opening the door and holding a handgun at his side and pointing down. The deputy immediately opened fire multiple times at close range. Fortson later died in the hospital. It is very troubling that the deputy gave no verbal commands and shot multiple times within a split second of the door being opened, killing Roger, the family said in a statement released by Crump, who represents them. We remain adamant that the police had the wrong apartment, as Roger was on the phone with his girlfriend for a substantial amount of time leading up to the shooting, and no one else was in the apartment, the family statement said. The killing is reminiscent of an unannounced police raid in Louisville, Kentucky in March 2020, when police burst into the apartment of Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old black woman who was an emergency medical technician. Killing her, police had obtained a no-knock warrant to raid the apartment, mistaking it for the home of a suspect. Taylor's death, along with the killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police weeks after, set off a worldwide wave of protest against racism in law enforcement in the summer of 2020. Okaloosa County Sheriff Eric Aden said in a statement that unidentified deputy was responding to a call of a substance in progress when he encountered an armed man and fired. The deputy was placed on administrative leave while the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and investigates the state attorney's office conduct an independent review. Aden said, "What we do know at this time is deputy did announce himself not once but twice," Aden told reporters upon releasing the video. The deputy knocked knocked on the correct door, he did not cover the peephole or otherwise obscure its view. Aden said he believes Fortson knew that law enforcement was at the door when he entered with a gun in his hand. The body camera video records the deputy twice saying sheriff's office opened the door. It remained unclear who called law enforcement on the day of the shooting or why. That is the size of top accolade global news updates. You can follow us on our social media platforms as displayed on your screen. Happy Friday.